Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Coach Me Plus. Coach Me Plus is the leader in athlete management software and a product that we've been lucky enough to implement here for over 2 years now. The product in and of itself is exactly what you need it to be, guys, with options ranging from being a workout provider, as in sending the workout directly to the student athletes' phones, to being a place where you can communicate with them and bring together multiple streams of data to be its own dashboard for you, your coaching staff, or the athletes. Or you can use what we've added to our menu of Coach Me Plus activities, and that's the hydration station, where all of this information that is provided is based off of research from the Corey Stringer Institute, where we're looking at weighing in versus weighing out and then providing optimal hydration strategies for the student athletes by them selecting through the menu and tapping on what they'll take home with them and what they're consuming prior to the next practice when all the numbers at the top are lined up green. It's something we've had really good success with and the kids have really bought in on. Just another great example of the awesome product that you can find at CoachMePlus.com. Guys, hop over to CoachMePlus.com today and check it out. It's a product I guarantee you won't be disappointed with. Hey everybody, if you enjoy the podcast and the content it provides, be sure to hop over and check out the community. The community is an exclusive members website that is just an extension of what we do here in July at the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar. What it is a combination of video lectures, a coach's corner with your Monday morning take-home information, and a forum where you can talk about anything and everything related to the field of strength and conditioning. In the community, you'll find content added each month from some of the top practitioners in the world, ranging from PhDs to high-level coaches, bringing you exactly what they're doing with their athletes or their research at the present moment. On top of that, an additional discussion by coaches bringing you that Monday morning information, things that you can add to your training program right away. Tying that in with the opportunity to discuss with coaches around the world in the forum on anything and everything from the topics addressed in these presentations to whatever you're seeing in your daily life as a coach. If this sounds like the right thing for you and your staff, go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and try it out for 48 hours for just $1. If you like it, you're signed up, ready to roll, and you're jumping into all the great content added each month. If not, feel free to go ahead and cancel at any time. No questions asked. We're really excited about what we're building in the community and hope you are too. Go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and check it out today. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, we welcome back Dr. Bryan Mann to talk about some confusion that he's seeing in the field today. And this field really revolves around the idea of periodization being dead. This leads Doc right into a discussion and a breakdown of actually what periodization is and how the confusion is coming from what the vernacular people are using today stems from. And this main confusion really is the differences between periodization and programming. And Doc really dives in deep and breaks down where these ideas came from and what they are and where we actually see them every day as a coach. And then he gets into the role of all the trailblazers before us and the scientists and the coaches who have done things before us and how what they have done and what they have written needs to drive more of the learning and investigation into these topics as opposed to what we see every day on Twitter. Guys, this really is an awesome talk. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Doc, thanks for being back, babe.
Man, I appreciate it, Jay. It's good to see you again. Even we're both crippled, so it's we're on even playing fields. We got to go play basketball right now and see how this goes.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, like both of us sitting from a chair.
Yeah, like it could have been worse. Well, it will be.
It could always be worse.
I guess so. But I know that you're fired up about something, so let's get right into it, man. What's got Dr. Mann ready to rip at it here?
It's really, Jay, what it is that I was really angry at first. And thankfully, my daughter was born. I kind of stepped back and calmed down and thought about things, or I'm just so freaking tired from sleeping 3 hours a night that maybe I'm just not as fired up. But we've got some issues with vernacular in our profession. And you talk about it with plyometrics, and this is just another area. Our profession, we got to stop and think, man. The NSCA wasn't formed until 1978, and The first JSCR didn't come out, I don't think, until the mid 80s, and I could be wrong there. Uh, and this journal was strength and conditioning research. We're a very, very young field, and everybody, um, unfortunately, and especially whenever we look at things with countries of origin and things like that, people call different things by different names, right? Looking at the jumps right now, time to take off and contraction time. They're the exact same thing on a counter movement jump. It's just over in the, you cross that one big line that divides everything. On one half, they say one thing, and on the other half, they say another. Uh, what is it called whenever we're broken into hemispheres, whatever that line is? I don't remember. Some sort of meridian. Prime meridian?
Yes.
I don't know. I think that might be it. You can see the lack of sleep kicking in right there. But, uh, there's just all these different issues with it. And like we've talked about with plyometrics, well, there is things that are out there. It's not just up for every person to think about and go on their own and make up their own stuff, man. If we actually look, periodization is brought back to two people. It's credited towards Matveyev and Tudor Bompa. And Tudor Bompa supposedly coined the term. And he said that it refers to two important aspects of planning and programming. The plan is the periodization, which simply means that you divide the year into smaller training phases, making it easier to manage the training and peaking process. That's all periodization is. So it's not about sets, reps, intensities, etc. It's, hey, did you break things up? Is all year the same? Or do you have a preseason, off-season, in-season? Do you have a GPP phase versus a SPP phase, general physical preparedness versus specific physical preparedness? Do we break these things into these similar things? If you do, guess what? You use periodization. If you don't, then you're right. There is no periodization. If you don't have any difference in your program throughout the year, you have no periodization. If everything is just thrown completely at random, you have no periodization. And that's something that we got to step back and think about. Now, some people have said that there is no difference between programming and periodization. It's all semantics. Well, to me, that's like saying a love tap from my grandmother and an uppercut from Mike Tyson are the same thing. Both people made contact with my face, but the results are going to be very, very different. And let's even go further. I'm talking about like mid-'80s Tyson with Cruz de Amato whenever he was a beast. I still wouldn't want to get hit by Mike Tyson, but that dude was a freaking straight-up killer, before Don King got a hold of him and ruined him. But that's for a whole other podcast. So, athletes we've ruined, I guess, and that would be one hell of a podcast that I could probably speak on for 2 hours about. But, it's those sorts of things, Look at Yesus, man. Look what he talks about, GPP versus SPP. And we also got to look at things too, and we got to remember that context is king, right? Context is king for everything. If I look at a program for an Olympic weightlifter, and I look and I see how its intensity, if you look at Matveyev's thing, moves up, that's going to be different than intensity for a sprinter, a basketball player, etc. Because the intensity doesn't necessarily mean percentage of 1RM for them. It could mean specificity. And, I've talked about that with Anatoly before. I've talked about that with Doc, that, sometimes I think that we miss out on context. We read something and we're only looking at it from our lens, and we're not able to step back and apply it. And God knows I'm horrible about that, especially whenever I was a strength coach. Everything was powerlifting. Let's go make it into our athletes. But, we've got to step back and look at things. Now, there's multiple different what we call periodization models. I don't know if that's the actual correct term. And I think that goes back to being a young field. If periodization is just simply the plan, what's the difference? But if we look at the way that plan is put into place, well, let's just look at a few, block training, from Assurin. You've got your accumulation, your transmutation and realization phases, right? And those are just going through different periods within a phase, and the exercises change depending upon what the goal is and what the time of year is. There's a lot more specificity as we move in, and a lot of more shortness within the cycles as we move into the in season during the competition phases as there are in the off season. Let's look at Bondarchuk's periodization, right? His models, which at face value, you look at them and you're like, there's nothing here. The hell, this makes absolutely no sense. This guy just changes things randomly. Well, look at how he does his programming, and you'll see that the exercises that he selects for that individual as they're going into the competition season for the meets that matter, they're all the exercises that have elicited the greatest response in the throw for that individual. So, it looks like there's nothing there, but there is a plan. And whenever it's the general phase, the GPP, the early off season, what's he doing, dude? Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What's he doing whenever it comes into time to peak? He's doing the exercises that elicit that peak for that individual. So there is, even with Bondarchuk's style of programming, there's periodization, there's planning that goes into it. Let's look at some other stuff. Daily undulating periodization, right? Whenever we get down to it, you're going from the lowest to the highest with utilizing the same exercises. That's a lot more up and down, but it's still got that same plan. And you know what? Whenever you're going into the competition period, and honestly, I don't ever hear anybody talk about DUP with actual athletes in the in season. You'll hear about flexible nonlinear periodization, but what is that? Oh, let's see. It's about getting the athlete to peak at the right time, but utilizing only what's available to that athlete on that given day. Right? So if your guys are blown up, let's say you just did, man, I don't know. What's something extremely explosive and taxing in basketball for you guys at practice?
Like, let's just say, at practice?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it would just be like 4-on-4 full court, 3-on-3 full court.
Yeah. So let's say that you just did that, and then you planned on doing a lot of power in the weight room that day, coming in afterwards. No, you're not going to do it. You're probably going to do something recovery, bodybuilding, try and stimulate some growth hormone, testosterone in those athletes to have them back and ready to go for the next day, right? But let's say it was an easy practice, or let's say you did the 3-on-3 instead of for an hour and a half. Maybe they only did it for 10 minutes. Well, then that's an appropriate day to do power because they still have plenty of it left. So that's flexible nonlinear periodization. It's still a program. It's still a plan. They've got a plan. Hey, plan is to peak at this given day. But hey, there's flexibility. If you're in this sort of state today, it's kind of like with Chris talks about it and calls it fluid periodization. Where you're just training what you can train that day. Those windows of trainability that they talk about with Omega Wave. That's the same sort of thing. It's not that you don't have an overall plan. That, is it exercises? Is it percentages? Is it sets and reps? It's any of it, man. It's your own style. And that's the programming. So, we talk about periodization. It gets confusing because people say periodization is dead. Well, if periodization is dead, then you're doing the same thing all year round. We've got to look at periodization as just what it is. And it's that breaking the year up into these little tiny sections rather than these huge chunk, not huge chunks. This set thing that you will do this on this day, this on this day, this on this day. Guys, that's bullshit, man. You've got poetic license. You're a coach. You go out and you program that sets, reps, intensities, exercises. That's the programming, man. That's not periodization, and we got to look at it right, man.
No, 100%. And I think that I was one of those people that thought that too for a while, and then Brad showed up and punched me in the face, basically, this summer when he was talking about periodization and this and that. And it's like, yeah, like, even if it isn't a, quote, planned change, when you're making alterations that are moving in a desired direction, that's what it is.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, if you've got planned changes, and those changes cause stimulations that are going to cause a greater adaptation, that's periodization, dude. It's not just this sets, reps, and whatever. It's any sort of change. And if you're planning it and you're changing from general to specific, that's periodization. People might call it different things. And I think that's where we have our problem with this field, is that we don't have these set names for things. There's no set. It's like, okay, this is called this is called a bottle that's in my hand. That if people are listening on podcasts, they're not going to get it. It's a plastic bottle. It's full of water. I hold it up. You know that's a bottle. I hold this up, regardless of what's in it. It's a coffee cup. We know that. This is a phone. If I say these things, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for some reason, we want to take things and put our own little spins on whatever they are to prove that we're the smartest guy in the room. And I think that we need to start showing some humility and realize that there's the people that came before us were very, very brilliant as well. Yuri Verhoshansky, the guy is going to be speaking to us from the grave here very shortly. For those that don't know, I'm referring to the Shock Method book that's about to come out at any point from Ultimate Athlete Concepts. It's a fantastic read. And I'll tell you one thing, man. Whenever, I don't know if it's true or not, but Natalia and Yosef said I was the first person besides them to read his words on this. I'll tell you, that was just an eerie, kind of shocking feeling. I'm like, nobody has read Yuri's words. And thinking about editing, the only thing that I could bring myself to do edit was, part of me was like, oh, we need to throw in, the dynamic or the reactive strength index and a couple of these newer things. And I'm like, no, man, this is Yuri's freaking words. This is his work. Let's leave it as it is. Let's just clean up some of the translation. And, he's got it down. He was smart. He had it. Matveyev, Bampa. Guys, if we go back to their works, if we don't read the tweets, we don't read these 140 character things that people are putting out, and we go to the actual original works, we see that there is brilliance in there. And if we go with their terminology, things start to make sense. The periodization of the plan is the periodization, and the program is how you fit things in to get there. Bampa says it quite clearly. In Theories and Methodologies of Periodization, which unfortunately is out of print. I don't know if the newest periodization text uses those words or not. Not the one with Greg Hoff, the one that's after him. I haven't read that one yet.
I haven't either.
So quite frankly, then we go back and we look at some other things. Man, you look at the stuff from Berger. Look at the stuff from Hakkinen. Look at the stuff from Anoka, from Comey. Guys, if we go back and we look and we use the original works and then we get to the underlying principles, everything makes sense. It's not about this. Let's quit worrying about who's the smart, how to make yourself look smart on social media. We've got to just get back to read the original stuff. Have you ever seen A Beautiful Mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, John Nash, he quit going to class because he wanted to have this creative and original thought. But that was in John Nash's PhD program. That wasn't John Nash's bachelor's, his master's, his high school. So he had all of these foundational things that he had to draw from, that he could go on and build upon with his original thought. But he had all of the framework in place to go create something fantastic, which was game theory, which changed the way that we look at the world. So many people want to do that, but they want to do it from jump. What do I mean from jump? I mean, dude, I'm a GA. Yeah, from the start. I want to do this as a GA. I'm just going to come up with the greatest thing that's ever been. And dude, they haven't read anything from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s. If it hasn't been out in the last 3 years, they don't know about it. And they're missing out on all these foundational things. If we go back to the original materials, right? And people talk about how general adaptation syndrome is not a real thing. Well, you know what? It is a real thing. But we have to realize that there's at least 9 systems of the body that are adapting and working on any given time, right? That we've got to just pay attention to this and realize that each system has a different curve in which that it's going to adapt to. So, yeah, you know what? You're right that it doesn't work for all 9 systems to come back and work on this one given day. We have to just realize and take that into account that sometimes you're going to have more in the tank in one system than another, versus just rocking and rolling through everything because, oh, if I do this day, then I can do this day. No, it doesn't work that way. And, there's another paper that's come out from John Kiley that I'll go ahead and talk about briefly that a lot of people have had a lot of problems with. And I don't really understand. And it could be, I'm a little different because I was a practitioner for 18 years before becoming, before leaving. I'm not even left the profession. I'm not coaching anybody, but I'm still over there doing a lot of sports science stuff with the different teams here. But all John Kiley was saying in his paper talking about that we need to pay attention to other things, he wasn't saying don't periodize, don't have a basic plan, but realize that other thing. Well, he did say some stuff like, maybe it's just the change of stimulus rather than a percentage of 1RM. Whenever we change exercises, we elicit an adaptation. Well, yeah, that's no kidding. That's general adaptation syndrome right there, right? So we introduce a new stimulus. There's an alarm phase. We have an adaptation. Right. Yeah, there you go. And John's, just kind of going in, showing that works. But one of the other things that he was saying in the paper was other things affect adaptation. And we've shown that effects of academic stress on illness and injuries in Division I athletics. Stress matters. It does. It affects the adaptation curve. We've just got to look and step back and look at these things and start at the beginning. It's not starting where we are. It's not starting in 2018. We need to look back at the stuff from Alvin Roy, Al Miller, Johnny Parker, these guys that have been around the block forever, who did this for decades, who did this since before you and I were even born, and see what did they do and what worked and what didn't. And I'll tell you something, that these guys, these pioneers, they weren't just Joe Blow. They're pioneers for a reason because they made something happen because they were smart. Al Vermeil, did you ever hear the story? Have you seen Al Vermeil speak?
Once.
They tell the story about whenever he was hired, they didn't have much of an equipment budget, but they would send him to anywhere he wanted to go to learn, or they would bring anybody in that he wanted to learn from. And he spent something like $200,000 in travel, bringing people in and going places. The Carmelo Boscos of the world. And guys, if you don't know who Carmelo Bosco is, take your right hand, take it 12 inches from your face, and slap yourself. Just slap yourself. Go read Carmelo Bosco. He went and he learned from all these people, and then they learned, and what they started doing was kind of like Bondarchuk. It's like, hey, did this work? Did it not? Okay. He'll talk about, in every talk that I've ever seen him done, he talks about the foot quickness. People talk about foot quickness. Well, he learned that you can't train foot quickness. Whatever you do, it doesn't cause it to improve. They tested it with the Muscle Lab stuff. They tested it with Bosco's equipment. So they did a rigorous scientific testing with the Chicago Bulls. Let me tell you something. If it doesn't improve athleticism, if it would have improved athleticism, he would have been doing it. It's the Chicago freaking Bulls. And this is back in the 90s, whenever they were the dominant team. He would have done it. He would have continued to do it, and he would have said, yeah, you can improve it. But what did he find? With any of their players, none of their players did it improve. So that should tell you something. If you're doing the speed ladder for foot quickness, that ain't a part of it. But we're supposed to be talking about programming periodization. I got off on this long side tangent. Jay, just keep rolling me back in on the thing that we're supposed to be on, brother.
I love it, man.
I can sleep.
Yeah, what you've done is you've gone through and you've kind of gone full circle, though, and then it's a matter now of coming back and understanding that, the things that we're doing are still going to have a direction and still are going to be goal-oriented. How you do it is another debate or topic, or how you program it is another never-ending just clusterfuck.
Yeah, and it really is. And honestly, there's never even going to be an answer because it's going to matter on your players for their given training age, what they've done before, what they're going to do after, what they're required to do, what your logistics are. It's like, dude, if you've got 8 foot, let's say you like Olympic lifts, you've got 8 foot ceilings with 6'8" dudes.
Yeah.
How are you going to do a snatch, right? If snatch is your thing. So everything matters, man. The logistics, everything goes into it. And we've got to realize what we're debating about: programming or periodization. Saying periodization is dead, uh, that's that's a flaw. To me, it's flawed. It's flawed, and it may show that. You know what? To me, it actually shows with most of the people that I know that have said this that it just shows a misunderstanding. That they think periodization is only Matveyev's model, right? And Matveyev's model just simply said that you go from low intensity to high intensity and you try and peak at a certain point, which is, if we take that towards other things, towards other uh, fields other than, I'll just say it like this. To me, Matveyev's model still holds weight.
I agree.
And it still holds weight. People say Matveyev's model is stupid because there's no singular peak throughout the year. But there is a conference tournament. There is some part of the season whenever you've got to be performing your best. It might not be a single day, but what are you going to be the most polished in the first game? No. Should you be training to move towards things and more specificity at that point? Yes. Should it be at your most specific part of the year? Probably not, because you've got a long time to go. And the SBP, that's going to create different issues with the joints, the joint mobilities, the wearing and tearing on the body in different manners. So if you go too hard, too fast, dude, that's like freaking starting out going 95 whenever you're trying to go to, if I was trying to drive to Richmond, Virginia. Well, if I'm starting to try and drive 95 here in Columbia, Missouri, I'm going to get my ass pulled over and I'm not going to make the trip. But if I do it at the appropriate time on a stretch of highway there in Indiana, where I've never seen whenever you're going by Terre Haute and you just trying to make it to Indianapolis, I'm dropping the hammer going 95. I don't see a cop anywhere. That's the appropriate time.
Whenever you get by there, it's.
And whenever I get by there, because I take a picture of it and send it to you every
I
time.
know you do.
But there's a place and a time for everything. And we just got to stop and think. And if we look at things as they should be, where periodization is just the process of breaking things into periods over the course of the year, having it, 2 to 3 to 4, is it, off season and in GPP and SPP, off season, preseason, in season, postseason, that's 4 instead of 2. You can break it up into whatever sort of periods that you want. What we have to realize, though, is that if you are making planned changes, you're periodizing. There's tons of different, like we talked about, the programming model, periodization models, which really probably ought to be called programming models. So it's block programming, linear programming, flexible nonlinear programming, autoregulatory programming, the APRE, the VBT, all that stuff would fit into a type of programming. And I've been out at your place and I've been talking about it. When I talk about with VBT and APRE, this is where it fits into your annual plan. Guess what annual plan means? Periodization. They all fit in together. The reverse periodization. We should be reverse programming. So instead of going power at the end, you're doing power at the beginning, which is most appropriate for endurance sports. The daily undulating programming. You're going through different set and rep schemes for a certain trait, right? Maybe I've never heard that doorbell go off. Maybe it's 4 sets of 12 on one day and it's 8 sets of 6 on another. Both of them are in that hypertrophy rep range. Right. And that would be daily undulating. All of these different things are different programming methods for how we get to our main goal. And that, that's where I just want to say that, and I kind of come back around to the jump training and thinking about the same thing with the Tyson and the grandma. Right. It's calling a pogo hop a plyometric. That's Mike Tyson versus your grandma. You're completely different results and outcomes, versus depth jump, which would be the true plyometric. So, We just got to, I guess really my thing isn't so much just the programming versus periodization debate as it is that we've got to have common terminology. And shoot, that's been an issue for the past several years. I mean, Bill Kramer and several other people wrote a big paper about that about what, 3 years ago?
Hmm.
Whenever they're saying, okay, this is what force is, this is what power is. And because people are trying to, this is velocity, this is acceleration. We've got to make sure that we have that same vernacular. Otherwise, I think that we end up having, and some of it, quite honestly, is I think is the issues from social media where we've got such few. How do I want to say it? You can't say if you can talk about your entire philosophy and it's not 140 characters on Twitter anymore. How many is it? I
Yeah,
don't know.
whatever it is. Yeah, but if you can tweet
Yeah,
it, it's
but
probably
if you
not a
can
good
talk
thing.
about, yeah, if you can tweet your entire philosophy, it's not a good thing. Your entire programming, your entire principles, whatever anybody chooses to use on that. Is it principles? Is it philosophy? Man, gold jacket, green jacket, who gives a shit? Let's just make, if you, either way, if you can get it out in 140 characters or 200 characters, you need to read more and you need to study more. And I think that we need to work on reading, studying, using the common vernacular instead of going out and trying to beat our chest and say, I'm the only one who has the right answer here. And some of the people who are saying that they're the only one that has the right answer, their answer may not be, their answer is flawed because they show an incorrect understanding, but they think they're the only person who's been doing it that way. And Anatoly Bondarchuk won a lot of medals doing it his way. That's not too dissimilar. There's a lot of lacks of similarity in the fact that this person doesn't, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they've never trained an athlete. So, but they do show some forward thinking, but they also show that they have no idea what the differences are between the verbiage. And to me, that's a travesty. So if we could all just get on the same page, can't we all just get along and just go from there, and get on the same page with the words? If we can do that, I think that a lot of the arguments, a lot of the discussions, and some of the works that I see from people talking about periodization is dead, it's like, well, this looks like a lot like you're doing these exercises now, and then you're changing to more specific exercises later. Okay. Or, you're working at strength early on and power later in the week. That seems like that's planned. That, let's just get away from 140 characters as our conversation medium. Let's pick up a phone. Let's call somebody. Let's go visit them. Let's use social media for what it's intended for, and that's to make connections and have deeper conversations rather than just sit there and argue over who's the most right in 140 characters. If we sat down and had true conversations, we would see that we're not that far away. People finishing up along those lines. People talk about Dan Baker versus my way of doing velocity-based training. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and say this. Dan and I talked about this in
Vegas.
November. Well, it was in Vegas, but we spent a lot of time hanging out in Australia.
Oh,
yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, and we didn't get to talk too much because he was being pulled into meetings, I was being pulled into meetings, and the one time whenever we were hanging out, we were both drinking, and I was trying to go drink for drink with Dan Baker, and guys, that's a bad idea. But we were talking while we were in Australia, and whenever you get down to things, he and I are saying mostly the same thing. Strength, speed, and speed, strength. Those are the two sides of the power coin. And where do they meet up? 1 meter per second. Yes, Dan. On squats, where do his guys hit peak power? 1 meter per second. The way he does things on an individual basis, because of the way that he programmed. Dude, I have 100 athletes on the floor at any one time in the afternoons. With track, soccer, it's in different sports like that. I'm not going to individualize that shit. We're going to look at it. You can't. So if you look at things from a tweet Dan Baker and Bryan Mann are two, people saying completely opposite things. But if you look at what we actually say, and whenever we sat down and have conversations, we're saying the same things. Squats, deadlifts, 1 meter per second. A lot of people think that I'm saying that those zones are that you should be doing cleans at 0.35 meters per second for strength. Well, no, read the book, right? I'm saying, that's definitely not anything near what I say. Read one of my articles, anything like that. Just don't read the tweet and go from there. Um, and think that applies for everything. But Dan and I were great friends, and we agree on far more than we disagree on. I do it from a management standpoint. He does it from individualization. He had a few people on the floor at one time. I had a bunch, and that's where our viewpoints are different. So, by a tweet, we're completely different. But if you look at the actual paradigms, we're more similar than we are different. And I think that whenever we get down, we have conversations versus tweets. Speaking of which, the less I'm on social media, the more happy I've noticed that I am overall. So I don't know if that's a real thing or not. But tying back around to the programming and periodization, let's make sure that we're reading books. We're not reading tweets. We are listening to interviews with some of the people who have done that, or reading interviews with some of the pioneers, the Boscos, the Kramers, the Zatsiorsky's, the Veroshansky's, the Selyanovs. We're not reading the people that ripped off their work. We're going back towards the original. Well, I guess with Selyanov, that book is so hard to read. I don't know. Was it ever actually published? Yeah, I don't know.
Not in English. There's some stuff
Yeah.
out there in English, but I don't know how much of it was published in English.
Right. Yeah. I've read something in English that was roughly translated. It's kind of like Anatoly's colored cover books on periodization. It was translated, but there was no context provided in the translation. But back to the point. I mean, there are so many people that have already done all of these things, and if we would look and we would read them first, we would have the footprint and the trail to go. And then we're just finding little different branches of the main trails and going in the right direction. Bob Alejo is famous for saying, "You tell me what it is, and I'll tell you what we used to call it." We're going in circles. Mm-hmm. We are going in circles. We are not blazing new paths. We are going in circles. How do we blaze a path? Or instead of going in circles, you read what's come before. You drink deeply of the good books. You read the original text. And then that way you know what they did, what they found, how it worked. And maybe, just maybe, then we can see where we need to put the variation onto things from our changing programming styles. Because I don't think we're ever going to not have periodization. I think to me that would just be asinine. But that could just be my opinion.
No, I couldn't agree more.
We've got to have an overarching plan. We can't just have, let's throw shit up against the wall today and let's see what card actually stuck to the Velcro and what didn't. And those are the ones we're doing. Everything else we're going on. So.
No doubt, brother. And that's awesome. Just because it's something that we've all talked about. And this goes back to when you talk to smarter people, that people look up to, those are the same things that House was saying. Those are the same things Dave was saying. Those are the same things that, we've talked about. And when you look at the stuff that they did, if people think that these other people that, were the trailblazers didn't think of those issues that you think don't arise, I mean, come on, man. There's a reason Verkhoshansky says you go in this direction. There's a reason things are written to go in that way. And until you get to the point where the people you're with have mastered and utilized everything that the people that have come before us do, why do we need to come up with some crazy new thing anyway?
Yeah, man. Yeah, if we would read the stuff, and that's why people put stuff into writing, so that somebody can have something to go off of, a blueprint to go for the next generation and take it further. And unfortunately, the taking it further isn't really, it's happening in some areas. It is. Some people are doing some things that are amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that at all. But the majority of things that are coming out that somebody, I still remember this kid who was trying to come up with a way how to get power from a vertical jump. I still go back to this. That happened like 6 years ago at a conference. And he's talking about how he's figuring it out and blah, 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 and doing this, that, and the other. And I just pull up this, I just go down on my phone, search Harmon equation, Serre's equation, and I pull them up and I go, hey, here's two things that you could use right now that you don't have to figure anything out with. And it's been researched and it's been published. And there's, we got to do it, man. We got to read. We got to know. We got to use this blueprint, and we got to quit doing just. It's like the person who thinks chains are new. The person, the person who thinks that putting a band on a barbell is a new concept. It's it all runs in cycles. I remember that Olympic lifting. It's whenever you and I started out, whenever you went under Kip, I don't know where you were before, but we were like ahead of the curve because we had some Olympic lifting and we had some powerlifting in there. We had some Westside Barbell and stuff like that from Fred Roll. And you go back and you look at Fred Roll's programming, that shit was solid, man. Now he didn't do a whole lot on the special exercises, but he did do things like he went from squats during the off season to more lunging and step up stuff towards the preseason and season because he was going in specificity, and things like that Fred was doing. He was and that was 80s and 90s when he was doing that stuff at KU, Derek Hansen's got this micro dosing that I think a lot of people have are bastardizing and trying to make into their own because it's the new thing. And Bob Alejo was putting a tweet out about that earlier today, and I responded before I thought, what is he actually meaning with but you look at that microdosing. Well, that's Charlie Francis's vertical integration. And guess what? Who did Derek work for? Charlie Francis. And if you listen to what he's talking about with microdosing, he's just talking about having a little bit of it every day rather than with the high speed and power stuff, rather than just putting it out there and trying to do massive amounts on one time. That's it. But shit, Jay, I could go on and on this. So I think we're at like 40 minutes of me just rambling.
No, and I love it though, bro. This is fantastic. And I think that a lot of this needs to get out there and a lot of people need to hear some of this stuff, and it's stuff that needed to be said. And the thing that I think is best about it is, again, it's the whole idea that, like Bobby said, man, like these things have names. Keep it that way. Stop screwing with it, because all you're doing is borrowing trouble and picking fights and causing drama that doesn't need to be there.
Hal said something that resonated with me. And for those that don't know, I interned for Joe Ken way back in 2003. Whenever he was at God, what was that we were just at? Was that national? No, that was Coaches Conference. That was in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He said something up there that if you're wanting to be famous and you're wanting to make a big splash, you're going to come and you're going to go very quickly. If your job is to make an impact, and that's the way that on the field, and that's the way that you go about things, you're going to be set. That's the way that I've always looked at it, man. My job is to make an impact. I don't care about these other things. I don't care about being who's the most right, all this other stuff. And if people would approach it that way, that their goal is to make an impact and not to get attention, then we're going to start seeing major change. But if everybody just wants attention on social media,
it ain't going to work, brother.
It ain't going to work. Yeah, you'll get your 5 minutes of fame. You'll get 15,000, whatever it's called, views or interactions, and then you're gone. You're done. Why don't you look to make an impact rather than just get attention?
No doubt. Doc, as always, man, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We'll be in touch soon, homie.
Sounds good. Hope that knee eases up.
Yeah, man. Hope you're up moving around again soon, too.
Yeah. Later.
And a huge thanks to Dr. Mann for spending the time with us again today. I mean, guys, let's be honest. This is things that we've been talking about for a while here. Getting on the same page with terminology is going to end a lot of this, fake confusion that we have when it comes to what's going on in training, and I can't thank Dr. Mann enough for spending the time with us today and, pointing at some of these things and pointing at himself with a couple of them as well in order to help us start to get on the same page and understand where we're going a little better. And as always, guys, if you enjoy the talk, please share it through the social media outlet of your choice, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. Again, guys, if somebody could take something from the talk, tag them below the post. DM them the talk. Tag them on it on Twitter, whatever it may be. We are just trying to get the best information out there possible to all the great coaches out there. And as always, thank you for everything that you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.